The scalability of the innovation is gigantic, doesn't require huge infrastructural investments from, in a way, the industry where it goes to in order to be utilized. And these scalabilities at the moment are mind-blowing, in my opinion, at the moment, to understand it.
You're listening to Art of the Possible, your go-to podcast for all things pivotal and current in digital transformation, bridging the physical and digital with revolutionary solutions. In each episode, sit down with industry's foremost experts, leaders, and visionaries to discuss how they are solving some of the world's biggest challenges through digitization, offering actionable insights to help you with your digital transformation journey. Let's dive into what's possible.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art of the Possible podcast. I'm excited to welcome today's guest, WIPAK CEO Karri Koskela. WIPAK is a global company known for its sustainable, flexible packaging solutions. While we have worked together for almost a decade to bring innovative packaging solutions to the industry, earlier this year, Digimarc was thrilled to welcome WIPAK into its Center of Expertise Partner Program as a founding member. WIPAK's mission statement is to drive innovation, growth, and sustainability in packaging solutions, which is why Karri is the perfect guest for today's Art of the Possible. We are diving deep into the topic of plastics recycling, including the regulations charting a path for closed-loop recycling and specifically, the critical role sustainable packaging will play in these efforts. Led by the EU, governments around the world have set impressive goals to ensure plastic packaging is reusable, recyclable, or compostable. But solving the plastic pollution crisis is more than just a matter of complying with the impending sunrise of ever more demanding regulations. It is something we must come together to solve to ensure the future of our planet. While this might sound daunting, the good news is that the only thing required is motivation. As you'll hear in these next 30 minutes, the technology to effect change and achieve this goal exists today, and there are multiple ways to get started on that journey. With this as a backdrop, let's dive in. Welcome, Karri. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Well, hello, Ronnie. It's great to talk to you again.
Likewise, Karri. I am really looking forward to getting your insights on this topic because it is a topic that impacts us all. But before we dive in, could you give us a little bit more on your background so our listeners can better understand why you are indeed the perfect guest for today's topic?
Of course, I've worked within the packaging industry already for about 3 decades. So it gives me a little bit of insight at the moment, of course, how packaging as an industry has evolved, together with the raw material manufacturers, the brands, the retail, the end consumers. And also at the same time, as an environmentalist from my background, I followed the so-called sustainability discussion also with a longer trend. I followed already plastics recycling, for example, in the late 1980s already, and the discussions around that time. And it's not an easy topic to solve. So from my career background and having worked in multiple regions around the globe also, I think it's a really interesting time to be talking about sustainability and how we're able to, in a way, accompany it with the digitalization wave and, for example, digital watermarks that I'm sure we'll touch base today. So it's a bit of a sort of a culmination point also in my career. I mean, I will be in the industry maybe another 10 to 15 years before hopefully retiring, and I would really like to see is that sustainability and recyclability takes a genuine action and a genuine step forward also in the world of plastics.
Thank you, Karri. And as promised, you are the perfect guest with your global background, not just in packaging, but also environmental issues. Now, as you mentioned, our topic today is not new. Together, we've been exploring solutions to achieve closed-loop recycling to end plastic pollution since at least 2019, first with a group of industry leaders under the auspices of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and more recently with AIM, the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, and more than 160 other industry leaders via the Holy Grail 2.0 Digital Watermarking Initiative. But even with these powerful endorsements, the industry has been slow to act. So let's fast forward to today, Karri. From your perspective, what is the current state of the sustainable packaging industry? With the goal to end plastic waste, what are you seeing in terms of adoption of innovative sustainable packaging solutions and proven technologies like the digital watermarks you just mentioned?
Well, to be honest, I would say is that shame on us as an industry is that we've been slow. Somebody could argue is that the packaging and packaging waste regulation in the EU has slowed down some of the discussion at the moment on digitalization-related aspects, and some of the monomaterial discussion has hijacked a little bit of the agenda. So maybe the last years actually has a little bit experienced I suppose, not a forgotten thing as a topic on recyclability, but it got really stuck with the monomaterial things in EU. Now, the thing which I would also emphasize currently then is that now that we're starting to find a legislative basis also in EU, we really need to start addressing is that, okay, why do we need the digitalization as an enabler for sustainability? And the hard reality is that if you look at the day-to-day related issues currently, whether it would be marine pollution, whether it's the slow rate of recyclability of plastics in EU or any continents in the world, we have the solution already, for example, with the digital watermarks actually in play. So the hard reality is that if, let's assume for a moment, imagine every packaging, irrespective whether it would be plastics, paper, whatever it's, glass, metal, would have a digital watermark where it could be tracked already using existing infrastructure, which is really happening already at manufacturers, brand, retails, and even the recycling plants. The recyclability rates could be, in a way, doubled, if not tripled, almost overnight, in terms of how effective we are, irrespective of the continent. And I think the data element particularly is the one which we haven't fully understood even within the industry. And now combining digital watermarks with the data and then being able to recycle products, for example, with the cleanliness of being able to recycle it backwards to plastics industry, fundamentally, we sit with all the basic things already as proven technology. And the reason why I say is that shame on industries is that we haven't acted on them. We haven't understood what we are having in our hands. And that's why it's almost ironic is that the project originally was called Holy Grail. We never just understood actually is that how holy the Grail is, and we already have it, but we haven't started utilizing.
I fully agree with what you're saying. At times, it feels like the two things that get the most lip service, but perhaps not the most action, are sustainability and data. They are both mission critical, yet even 2 short years ago, we would talk to people about the novel data that can be generated through the use of digital watermarks to improve recycling. And their first thought was always, who on my team is going to analyze the data? What insight should I task my marketing team to come up with? Today, in the era of generative AI, this is no longer a necessary question to even be asking. Today, we have these super smart engines that only need to be fed one thing: clean data. And the companies that are going to win are the companies that figure out how to get the most disparate sources of clean data to their Gen AI engines, because it's that data that will allow them to take share, grow sales, and reduce costs. Now, the really interesting thing about the use of digital watermarking to improve recycling is that in order to improve recycling, the data that is generated comes from the end of the product lifecycle, which just so happens to be the single greatest data desert for packaging producers, brands, and retailers. Once a product moves beyond the front of store scan, it stops producing data. In essence, it goes dark to the world. Yet digital watermarks are capable of creating a giant data oasis in this massive data desert. The improvement in the quality and quantity of recyclate is huge, and it's important, but the data collected through technologies like digital watermarking adds even more value to recycling initiatives. We can unlock novel data about how we can improve the recyclability of packaging, yes, but this data is also valuable to marketing, to finance, to production, and stakeholders across the supply chain. This digitization of packaging with digital watermarks not only improves the recycling process itself, it reveals never-before-seen data that will unlock new opportunities to grow sales and reduce costs.
Yeah, again, fully agree on that one. I think what is really interesting is that I can produce today a product that will be completely recyclable according to the upcoming norms, whether they would be EU-based or whether they would be US or Asia countries-based at the moment on that one. And I can put the digital watermark actually on my packaging today. But the problem is that, like you said yourself, is that after it leaves the store, I have no understanding what happens to it. And the irony of things at the moment is that if we would have the data management systems to capture that data in a credible manner at the moment, we would already have the basic infrastructure, because many of the existing infrastructures already, whether it's retail, recyclers, mobile phones, these kind of things, it already exists. We don't need to invest billions and billions in order to get accessibility to the data. Now, because we don't have the data itself at the moment, it leads exactly into the conclusion is that we're not able to utilize it. And what is a fantastic opportunity for the packaging industry particularly is to understand is that data whether it's already within us or our brands or retails or something like that, and particularly when it goes beyond the market, that data could generate a whole new segment for a very conventional industry like packaging. So not only solving data and practical requirements that the sustainabilities will require so that it can physically recycle, but that data warehouse that you mentioned and the jungle of data that could provide, I believe that many industries, even traditional manufacturing industries, have already actually started a data-driven business segment, which is part of their portfolio now, and in some cases already the majority of their turnover. There are elevator companies who sell elevators, but they understand the data of people flow, and that's their service model type of things. Within packaging, these kind of things are very seldom existing, and we're missing out on money at the moment, which is on the table, but we don't grab it. So in addition to solving sustainability, I think we should go even wider and bigger in our thinking how to utilize already the digital watermarks and the capability to grab that data. And the hard reality currently is the fact is that we have the Gen I, which has been now created in a way, or not created, but evolved particularly in 3 years' time. In legislations, whether it's US, whether it's in a way Asia or EU, we talk about deadlines like 2030, 2035 type of things. So imagine where the Gen AI is going to take us in the deadlines of 2030 or 2035 at the moment, and combining that with data and thinking what kind of models we could actually achieve as business opportunities at the same time when we solve significant problems related to the sustainability and the recyclability of materials like plastics. So if you put those two together, I know maybe I'm getting too old already at the moment, but even my understanding is starting to actually go beyond the capability where it could be at the moment. But it demonstrates is that, look, why wouldn't we take that opportunity and at the same time address these concerns what we have related to sustainability and recyclability or recycling of materials?
Yeah, you bring up some really good points. And what's even more interesting is there's a perfect analogy in the packaging world, right? With the UPC and the EAN 40 years ago. That technology was rolled out to improve retail operations, but the benefit that none of us saw coming was the product data created by scanning all those barcodes. Indeed, this was how modern marketing was born, right? Matching real-time buyer or customer data with buyer personas. It actually begs a question. If the industry has a history of unlocking novel data to deliver added value through digitized packaging, Karri, why do you think the packaging industry hasn't caught on to the full value of the data collected through the use of digital watermarks for recycling?
And what is also very powerful is that if you talk to any startup at the moment, one of the things at the moment, every time with the startup is being asked the question is that, can you scale this up? And I think what is also important to understand is that when we would, for example, put a digital watermark on one of our products, for example, some of the award-winning things that we've launched in Germany for condiments and soups and things like that, that product automatically became digital globally. Global. Not in EU, not in Finland, not in US, but globally. And vast majority of manufacturing and retail infrastructure, or the mobile phones from a fraud or counterfeit related issues, is able to already identify that almost from the first moment onwards at the moment. So the scalability of the innovation is gigantic, doesn't require huge infrastructural investments from, in a way, the industry where it goes to in order to be utilized. And these scalabilities at the moment are mind-blowing, in my opinion, at the moment, to understand it. And here, I think that a little bit the concern that I have actually speaking from Europe is that we tend to be always thinking is that, okay, somebody came up with a good idea, how can we regulate? Let's put a lot of legislation on top of it to make it difficult. And I think what is really interesting to see, where I have certain concerns even for Europe, is that the Americans and typically North American continental people, they are pretty quick in understanding this, that is there a business opportunity? And they will grab it if there's money. And I'm not trying to turn the discussion political, but in many Asian countries, actually, they are much more advanced in actually implementing the sustainability-driven innovation because they just make it a hell of a lot of sense. So I'll take an example, for example. In Europe, we talk about air pollution and cars and electric vehicles, etc., etc. If you go to Shanghai or Beijing now, and those of us who've been there 15, 20 years ago, the air, you can see the blue sky. Why? Because they looked at this, that this just makes a lot of sense. Let's put the regulation in place, and then let's focus on the innovation. And that's what my concern currently at the moment on this one is, particularly from a European perspective, is that we do love our legislation, but we should sometimes think a little bit more is that how could we scale up this from an innovation point of view, because it's already here. And that's where I see the problem also, is that actually making it possible is about actually building the same group of instances that worked on the Holy Grail to say that, okay, we got it that far. We got distracted maybe by some of the discussion in Europe with PPWR. Let's have a look at it, how we can utilize this in the future. Because I can tell you that in Asia, they move on this topic significantly faster than in Europe. Why? Because they understand the scalability of this. They understand the data-driven issues. And again, from a European point of view, we very often, in a way, credit ourselves as being sustainability leaders. I wonder in 5 years' time, if we don't move forward with these activities in the EU, whether we can claim to be the sustainability leaders, or whether we sit actually in our chairs thinking is that, the world went past us because we didn't cherish the innovation that we had at hand, and we could have become the global leader in this aspect also in sustainability. And that's a bit of a concerning topic for me, particularly for Europe, to start sitting down and wondering is that whether we want to do something.
So you believe the industry understands the value of data at a high level, but doesn't fully understand the power of digital watermark in delivering this data? That while perhaps some understand digital watermarks can identify or authenticate items where other means don't work well or don't work at all, people haven't historically considered recycling centers as a source of valuable data. So we need to do some educating that this data exists and it can be used to inform business and sustainability strategies. That's really powerful insight.
It might sound, small, but it's a very pragmatic thing, is that in Europe in particular, but also in other parts of the world, the players within the packaging, let's call it supply chain or value chain, we need to prove recyclability. So it's not a question whether I can actually take my packaging to a testing laboratory and prove that it can be recycled, but I need to really demonstrate is that my product was recycled in a way. And that proving that your product really does recycle, not only that it has the capability of being recycled, will become a significant catalyst, whether you are able to claim that you are really doing something genuine to recycle, for example, plastics moving forward. So now it might be enough to say is that my packaging is recycling ready. When it comes 5 years forward at the moment, I think the claim needs to be is that I can prove that X amount of percentage of my packaging was de facto recycled, and here is the data which I can actually utilize to prove it. So as a catalyst, this is starting to become now a little bit more understood also within brands and retail. To ask the question is that, okay, it's not a question why should we do it? It becomes a question is that, okay, how do we do this? And again, from an industry perspective, it's not a question that each and every brand or each and every retailer would need to do, but there needs to be some kind of a system that actually allows this to be done so that you have collective information. And these drivers starting to acknowledge, for example, only as a minute detail, is that I need to prove my numbers is a critical element moving forward.
It's another really good insight, Karri, and agreed, it's a really big issue. I think this is a good spot to pivot our conversation a bit. Let's look ahead to what is to come in the recycling industry. Recently, I've had conversations with executives from large retailers and brands who worry that the industry might have been lulled into a false sense of security, resulting in inaction. In moments of candor, these leaders have shared that while sustainability is a hot topic, there really hasn't been a forcing function, no mandate to act. This said, you and I have discussed some of the catalysts that will spur real action in the next couple of years. Could you share some of these emerging catalysts with our audience, Karri, including new regulations in the EU, and how the industry, including WIPAK customers, can prepare for these upcoming catalysts so they aren't scrambling to react once they're here?
Yeah, and again, we come back to some of the points earlier in our good discussion is that, these kind of things would address also some of the ongoing concerns related to sustainability or recyclability or demonstrating recycling. But like we discussed earlier, there's this gigantic world of business opportunities which goes even beyond that by utilizing the data. And I think that's part of the responsibility that I look at it also from a packaging industry point of view is that we need to start being better in demonstrating also to the players in the value chain is that, look, this is not about data. This is not only about the sustainability related issue, but it's the whole lot which is here in addition, which as an investment will very quickly to return it to you if you build that into a more holistic business model moving forward. And I'm not trying to downplay the importance of sustainability. That's an important trigger at the moment, driving that as an activity. But I think it's our responsibility as industries to start educating and say that, look, let's have a look at it, what this can do for you. And those discussions are the examples that we are now more and more starting to have, both with brands and retails, and when we actually tap then the whole value chain and see where the same digital watermark can be used, not only to comply with legislation, but particularly to do million things, then very quickly it becomes an issue that, okay, then the return on investment is really, really quick when we start doing what can we do with that. And that's starting to emerge. But like you well said, 3 years and a moment. And that's why I think is that we need to get our act together from a packaging industry point of view and get the group of players again around the table saying that, okay, let's think, how do we crack this and how does everybody win in the value chain by doing it this way?
This episode is brought to you by Digimark, the pioneer and global leader in digital watermarking technologies. For nearly 30 years, Digimark innovations and intellectual property in digital watermarking have been deployed at a massive scale for the identification and authentication of physical and digital items. To learn how Digimark can help you with your digital transformation journey, visit www.digimark.com.
Yes, it's always easier to spur action with carrots versus sticks. If businesses feel that they need to do this for outside reasons, we aren't going to get the widespread buy-in. Only when businesses understand the ROI of adopting digital watermarking to improve recycling are we really going to begin to see action. Businesses must understand that beyond achieving sustainability goals, they will improve the bottom line and capture new market share. And we must focus the industry discussion on what will drive action.
And that's why, let me relate that to the next generations in play. Imagine that you're able to demonstrate is that your packaging or your brand, for example, or for a retailer are saying is that my product got recycled at the rate of 92%, for example. And then when there is more public data available, you notice that you're a market leader at the moment on the fact is that your product got recycled. When you got a digital watermark, you can relate to that also with the consumers to say is that, hey, I buy these products because I'm part of this gang that is able to demonstrate really is that packaging recycles. Imagine what marketing data that provides, for example. So talking about the outline type of things at the moment and how to talk with the consumer, and particularly the more growing sustainability conscious generations to come, at the moment, the irony of things is that it's there. We have it in the office. We have it in our production lines, the capability. To put that into action is one of the greatest things that intrigues me now, of being part of that gang who can look back in 10, 15 years to say that, well, we as a company was part of the gang who put that thing in motion, really multiplied it so that it became a system change. And I can tell my grandchildren says that I was part of the group together with my company who actually established the recyclability of plastics so that it's not in the ocean, it's not at the landfills, but it genuinely recycles. I think that's a story to tell to your grandkids.
I agree. And I think this is a perfect segue into the last section, and my favorite section, of The Art of the Possible. As I mentioned in the intro, while this all sounds daunting, the good news is the technology exists today. And as you just said, you are literally demonstrating this in your offices and your production lines today. We are partnering and producing this technology for large companies. So with the technology available and scalable, what tangible steps can our audience take to start their recycling journey?
I think it is about, if I look at from a company's perspective who are in the value chain of, for example, packed product goods and things like that, it's really to start voicing it within internally the companies to say is that, look, we need to come back to the table, building from the good coalition of the Holy Grails and say that, okay, let's take the next step forward. And I think what should be done, again, like you pointed out yourself at the moment, is that there is so much of money in development R&D related to data and Gen AIs and these kind of things at the moment, is that we could really, within our companies, influence the fact is that we don't just try to say is that we need to do this because we comply with something. I think a lot of the companies within value chain should understand it is that, okay, we need to research Gen AI, how it helps our business moving forward. Maybe pushing this also with not only the sustainability topic, but maybe with this data Gen AI is something that we can all start doing because, right or wrong, that seems to be a very popular topic now within companies, and quite a lot of R&D money at the moment is on the table to say that, okay, what should we do with Gen AI? And maybe that's an angle that we should more consider in our internal discussions as well as stakeholders within the value chain to boost it up a little bit, to make it a little bit, I don't know, if you allow me the expression, make it a little bit more sexy at the moment, and therefore attract the money actually moving forward. Maybe that's a trigger, and we need to approach it also a little bit differently rather than just talking about PPWR and compliance with legislation. Let's make it fun, playful, these kind of things. So it might be very simple by these kind of things.
Explain that last point for our listeners.
Yeah, it becomes playful when it's fun, when it's really something that people were saying is that, hey, now there's a story to tell. I think that's the same thing. It's not that different from a basic educational learning point of view. Kids nowadays learn significantly better when you give them a playful environment rather than sitting down and reading a book. Maybe we should consider also within the value chain is that maybe we should think it that way also in marketing it internally within our own companies and then talking about it in our value chain. Maybe it picks up a little bit more at the moment, and then it gets traction into actual implementation.
I agree. Those are two valuable things. One, change the narrative, make it interesting and sexy so that critical stakeholders lean in to learn more. We don't want recycling to simply be a check-the-box action. And two, companies can be creative in terms of identifying pockets of budget to fund these initiatives. For instance, you mentioned budgets for Gen AI. Using digital watermarking to improve recycling is also a data play with huge value. Why not tap into those budgets for AI? Because Gen AI engines are only as good as the data that goes into them. The companies with the best data, the most unique sources, and the cleanest data are going to be the winners. So why spend all that money rolling out generative AI if you're not feeding it the best data? It's like raising an athlete. Why wouldn't you put the best food you can into that athlete's body? Now, turning to more tactical levels, I would add 3 options around which we're having discussions. You can think of them as a crawl option, a walk option, and then a run option, with the option a company most interested in being dependent on where it is in its sustainable packaging journey. The crawl option, which is available through our Center of Expertise partners like WIPAK, is what we refer to as deploy now, activate later. This option allows brands and retailers to add digital watermarks ahead of planned activation in preparation for the inevitable. When it comes to things like taking advantage of packaging refresh cycles or the need to be recycle ready in preparation for the PPWR discussed earlier, those who wait until the last minute to prepare will be in a tough situation. It is expensive and it is stressful. Taking a deploy now, activate later approach is the perfect solution. As for the walk option, for those in Europe, conversations are underway to open several digital watermarking powered recycling markets, including Belgium and Germany, among others. For those interested in learning more, I encourage you to connect with us at the Sustainable Packaging Summit in Amsterdam, November 12th and 13th. Visit our booth, join us at the Digitization and AI session on plastics recycling, and attend Karri's keynote on the important topics we've been discussing today. For those not attending the summit, we invite you to connect with us directly to learn how you can participate in those markets opening in Europe. Unless you think all opportunities are European specific, for those interested in the run option, Digimarc white labels its technology to industry leaders, including large retailers and brands interested in leading the fight against plastic pollution. And as you mentioned earlier, Karri, large retailers can not only benefit from leading environmental change, but also in leveraging the same technology to fight shrink and improve in-store operations with the goal of saving themselves, and importantly their shoppers, precious time and money. Before I let you go, I do want to point out that WIPAK isn't just talking the talk. You're walking the walk with a commitment to reduce your carbon footprint to 0 by 2025, which is just a matter of months away. I think that's incredible, Karri, and I hope others follow your lead. Is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you wish we had?
Maybe let me elaborate on maybe 2 things further regarding our strategy and the carbon neutrality. We're almost there at the moment. Now, we've taken over 70% already at this stage, and we've got a solid action plan moving in that right direction in terms of actually making ourselves carbon neutral, not only by offsetting related issues, but genuine actions moving there at the moment. So if you think about, again, and this is where I draw my discussion particularly to the dinner table at home. So I think we as industry leaders and these kind of things, particularly in the field of packaging and particularly in plastics, we need to really work on this topic at the moment and enable the fact is that we are able to demonstrate to the next generations is that we got things in motions which solved some of the critical things that are problems that are associated with our industry at the moment. And I think that's the whole thing. You talk about actually the art of possible, which is absolutely right. But we need to also acknowledge the fact at the moment is that our head, our mindset needs to be geared in understanding is that we sit here now with the means and the capabilities to do this. This is a willpower and a decision discussion as well. And if we don't act on this issue at the moment, I can't sit at the dinner table in front of my kids to say is that I was mitigating some of the things which might be negative currently, even though I have the solution in my hand. Shame on me if I don't do that. So I think for those listeners who are really looking at this one is to say, look, pick up the phone, drop us an email, get the discussion going, and I can tell you is that you would join already a list of companies who are in this. And sometimes I train marketing people to say is that what happens on the day when you actually read through LinkedIn and you notice is that your competitors have solved the problem, and then you start thinking is that, okay, how do I do this? Do you really, as a company or a retail, want to follow, or do you want to lead? That's fundamentally one of the questions that every marketing person should also ask themselves to say is that, look, maybe I should educate myself more on this and how I can jump on board the development.
I couldn't say it any better, so I'm not going to try. Instead, I'm going to wrap up today's episode of The Art of the Possible. Karri, thank you for your time, and thank you to everybody listening today. We invite you to connect with us directly to explore opportunities for collaboration in the fight to end plastic pollution and the adoption of innovative sustainable packaging solutions. As Karri said, be the change that you want to see, and we all need to see this change. This is an important dinner table conversation with your family, but also a real business opportunity. This is one of those rare win-wins, right for our planet and right for your business. I appreciate all of our audience members listening. As a reminder, you'll find Art of the Possible on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get yours. Thank you, Karri. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Art of the Possible. The show notes include links to any resources mentioned in today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.